Trees have tremendous significance in the Bible. All throughout the text, humans are compared to them in both the Old and the New Testament. Man and tree were created to be fruitful. In fact, in the very first psalm of the Bible, human beings are compared to trees that are planted by streams of water that yield their fruit in season. In order for trees to yield fruit, be healthy, grow, they need light, they need water, and they need air. But if trees are to grow well, they also need to be pruned. If we took this metaphor another step, humans also need to have their dead pieces cut away. My name is Shauna Knox, and this is Further, where we explore the real Christ and the real you. The way to life is extremely narrow, and very few of us ever find it. But let's keep looking. We'll do it together. So what is pruning anyway? It's a term that's typically used in plant life, and it describes the process of removing dead, loose, or infected branches and stems from plants and trees. Even though humans are compared to trees in the Bible relatively often, this definition seems to fall summarily into the category of trees. But we're making an application to human beings here who admittedly have no stems or branches, because the Bible makes a number of references to the importance of pruning away what is dead in our humanity. In John chapter 15, Jesus says these words, "Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, the Lord takes away. And every branch in me that does bear fruit, the Lord prunes, so that it can bear more fruit." We cannot be fruitful in our humanity without having these loose, dead, and infected parts cut away. They have to go. By the time the Lord challenged me to give up alcohol completely, I rarely even had it. It seemed like a very unnecessary ask. I couldn't even remember the last time I had a drink. Even at weddings, I would ask for cider faithfully, which is very inconvenient. I was pretty vigilant about reducing my alcohol consumption almost as soon as I had come into the kingdom, because before my life with Jesus, I had a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol. So when God asked me never to drink again, and I wasn't even drinking, it was strange. It felt punitive, exacting, almost like all the progress I'd made to that point meant nothing, and the Lord didn't trust me to exercise self-control. But as I began to understand pruning more thoroughly, and more things were cut away from me, things that were less obvious than alcohol for someone who used to have a drinking problem, I began to comprehend that I can't always tell what's loose or infected or dying in me, and neither can you. If you don't prune a dead branch from a tree, that branch is stealing life away from the tree. Life is stolen from us when we give our substance to parts of us that are so loose, so infected, and so dead that all they're doing is maiming our fruit. And we were created to be fruitful. You can tell that you're not allowing yourself to be pruned when you look at your fruit. If your fruit, everything that comes out of your life, is undersized, undernourished, underdeveloped, rushed, unfinished, and generally just not representative of who you are, what you have to give, who God has called you to be, then you're probably not surrendering to the pruning process. Something is stealing life from you. Do you have an intuitive sense of what's taking life away? If you leave your life overgrown and unpruned, it isn't just harmful to you in the future. It leads to your destruction right now. In Isaiah chapter 5, the Lord talks about destroying his own vineyards. And in doing that, he says he'll remove the hedges of the vineyard so that it will be devoured. He'll break down the walls of the vineyard so that it will be trampled. And he says he will make the entire vineyard a waste because he won't prune it. Without being pruned, we make our lives a waste. That is a cost that is too high to pay. I've heard it said that you either pay now or you pay later, but you always pay. Let's not pay the cost of a wasted life. I mentioned before that I've experienced the pruning away of all types of things. Pruning is not just about removing behaviors. It's about mindsets, relationships, agreements, commitments. It's about everything. If your life is submitted to Jesus, it is a submission to parting with everything else at his discretion. Let's take some time to consider pruning in your life. Pruning has to do with removing the parts of you that are loosened, infected, and dead. What parts of your life have loosened in their commitment to God? Remember, you're only you in him. So any part of you that has loosened its commitment to God has loosened in its commitment to you. When he loses you, you lose yourself. Have you lost yourself? If you have, it is okay to come home. When something's infected, it's contaminated with a harmful organism that's causing a problem that only gets progressively worse. It only gets progressively worse. It's diseased. Are you able to identify a place of dis-ease in your life that only gets progressively worse? The easiest way to find these places is to search for realities in your life that just don't sit right. And then track your feelings now back to the point of origin. What are those elements in your life that cause you dis-ease? Where in your life are things simply worsening progressively? Let's stop the spread. In the cycle of life as God created it to work, things live and they die. Death is as essential to life as birth. Sometimes we have to let things die. Death is excruciatingly painful. It is so painful that it feels unnatural. But watching something die isn't more painful than pushing it out into life. Both are impossibly taxing, and there can't be life without either of them. We need death and we need birth. We need both. Are you letting things die? Are you giving life away to things that will never be alive again? Are you holding on to dead things? If you are, I'd like to come alongside you, take your hand, and let you know it is okay to let things die. I'd like to give you the permission you need to lay your dead to rest. In John, Jesus explains that the Lord is the vine dresser, and Jesus is the vine, and we are the branches. Sometimes in that natural cycle of death and life, the Lord causes dead things to live again. This is entirely His choosing. Our part is submitting to Him the things in us that we see are loose or infected or dying, and allowing Him to cut us as He sees fit. I don't want us to be reductive in our understanding of the pruning process. The Lord can cut away anything in any season, and we ought to be open to the full breadth of His flexibility. It is His right. Even in the natural, a tree can be injured if it's pruned incorrectly. We cannot prune ourselves, and we can't control the way the Lord prunes us. Even in the natural, there are different types of pruning. There's thinning, which is when you remove branches at the base of the tree. There's topping, when you remove most of the branches on the tree. There's raising, where you trim just the low-hanging branches. And then there's reduction, when you cut back the entire volume of the tree. Each type of pruning has its own objective, and only the vine dresser, the Lord, knows the pruning process that's best for each of us in our season. The topping method I just mentioned, it's usually done only with young trees. It trains them to grow in a very specific way. But after a certain point in that tree's life, that drastic removal of most of its branches would do more harm than good. We are not fit to prune ourselves. We can't reflect on a pruning process even in the past to determine what we need in this season. And we absolutely cannot apply our own pruning journey to someone else. We will do more harm than good. I can remember a few distinct times in my life when I heard the Lord give me a clear directive, but it conflicted with what other men and women of God, who I greatly respected, thought I ought to do. That confusion was so painful. But by the grace of God, and truly only His grace, I was able to let myself be cut in places even people I looked up to thought were unnecessary. Now I reflect on those moments as seminal turning points in which I can see with an uncomfortable clarity all the things I would have lost if I substituted the Lord's pruning for someone else's version of it. Let Him prune you. Someone else might kill what He has for you. When a tree is pruned, it gets stronger. Plant experts say the most impactful thing that can be done to affect the lifetime of a plant is the structural pruning of the plant when it's young. When it's properly done, you actually need less corrective pruning in the lifetime of the plant. So if you're at the very beginning of this journey, you are in luck. Because if you let the Lord cut everything He wants to cut now, there will be less cutting away in the long run. You'll have to forgive the extended tree metaphor in today's episode. Anyone who knows me will tell you unequivocally, I love trees in a very unusual way. They are very dear to me, and when I look at them, I see God. In Leviticus chapter 25, the Lord said, "For 6 years you will sow your field, and for 6 years you will prune your vineyard and gather its fruits. But in the 7th year, there will be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not sow your field or prune your vineyard. There is a time for pruning. Don't miss the window. Prune now so you can rest." Until next time, grace and peace.